Hello, do you know that ECG is very, very important in healthcare practice, especially when you're dealing with cardiovascular problems? When you're monitoring your patient, what are you looking at? In this video, we will be talking about the basic interpretation, the components of the ECG. Does it look chaotic to you? Stick and stay. Do not go anywhere. This is Smartnursing with me, Nurse Evie. Watch this video to the end. Hit the subscribe button, like, share. Let us do this together. Alright guys, let's start with the ECG paper. Okay, I'm sure you might have seen an ECG paper that looks like this, something like this, lines crossing each other both vertically and then horizontally. It looks just like a graph. Okay, if you know what a graph is, this looks exactly like the graph. Now if you take an ECG paper, you have a vertical axis, as you can see here, and then you also have a horizontal axis. Now the vertical axis is where we have the amplitude. Okay, this is where we have the amplitude or the voltage, and then the horizontal axis is where we have our time. All right, this is our amplitude or voltage. Okay, and this is time. You know pulse is calculated in time, don't you? Pulse is, read for 1 minute. Okay, that is exactly what this will lead us to. All right, so on this axis or on the s-axis, we have our time. Okay, and then on the vertical axis we have our amplitude. Now pay attention. When you take an ECG paper, one small box like this side, on the horizontal axis, when you bring it this way, you see a small box like this is equal to 0.04 seconds. All right, it's equal to 0.04 seconds. This is one small box, something like this is 0.04 seconds. All right, now if you take a big box is made up of 5 of those small boxes, 1 2 3 4 5, and also 5 vertically, so 1 2 3 4 5. So when you take this big box, that will be what? 0.04 times 5, isn't it? Times 5, and this will lead us to 0.20 seconds, or simply 0.2 seconds. All right, you take a big box like this vertically. All right, that is if you measure it from here to here. Okay, this is a big box, this is a big box. Okay, but we want to measure it from here to here, not here to here. Remember we said this side is our voltage or our amplitude, and this side is our time. All right, so the time is where we said this small box from here to here is 0.04 seconds, but 5 of that will lead us to what? 0.2. Now let me ask you guys a question here. If this box, 5 of these small boxes is 0.2 seconds, how many of these big boxes do you think it will take for us to get to 60 seconds, which is 1 minute? And then you know why 60 minutes is important, 60 seconds is important, because we calculate pulse in 1 minute. All right, let's be thinking about that. We'll come back to that. Okay, so far we've been saying that when you take an ECG paper, on your vertical axis here, you have your voltage or your amplitude, okay? Then on your horizontal axis here, we have your timing. Let's keep that in mind. This is very important because it will help us to understand our waves better, okay? Okay, now let us look at our ECG rhythm. I'm sure when you take an ECG paper, you will see something like this. You will see some lines going up, some, like zigzag, some coming down, some, you will see something like this. What does this mean? If you see this on your ECG paper, what does it even mean? Now, before we go into it, let's look at some terms. We have what we call the isoelectric line. Okay, this isoelectric line is an imaginary line drawn through an ECG rhythm. An imaginary line. So just like we have what we call the number line, that we draw something like this, okay? And this is 0. All right, this is 0. The numbers to the left are negative. Maybe so it's -1, -2, -3. Okay, then to the right we have our 1 or 2, 3, something like that. So there is a clear line here that we are referring to. So when you pick an ECG strip or an ECG rhythm, you draw an imaginary line through it this way. Draw an imaginary line. Okay, draw an imaginary line through the ECG this way. Okay, so this is your isoelectric line. Why is this line even important? What do you even need to know? Okay, why are we worrying ourselves? Now, the isoelectric line is important because that is the reference point of your deflections. So we have positive deflections and negative deflections. Now, a positive deflection are the deflections or waves or complexes that are above the isoelectric line. Okay, so something like this is a positive deflection. Something like this is also positive. Okay, something like this is also positive. All right, just follow me. You get to understand why this is also very necessary. Now, anything below the isoelectric line is what we call a negative deflection. Okay, anything below the isoelectric line is a negative deflection. So something like this point here is negative. This is also negative. All right, now let me take that again. You have an ECG rhythm or a strip. Okay, you draw an imaginary line through this way. All right, now when you do that, anything above that line is positive and anything below that line is negative. Now let's look at the rhythm in details. Let us look at the rhythm in details. Imagine this is our rhythm. This deflection up here is called the P. Okay, this one down here is called the Q. The next here is an R. This is a T. This is an S, and this is a T. That is why it is called the PQRST rhythm. Okay, so ECG rhythms are simply referred to as well PQRST. Okay, sometimes you can have a U attached to it, so you can have a PQRSTU. All right, but that will be in another video where you have pathology. Sometimes you will not have the PQRS. Sometimes you can just have an RS. okay? Sometimes you can have a QRS. Sometimes you might not even have a P at all. Sometimes you might not even know what there's a T or there's a P. Okay, we will talk about all those things in another video later. But for the benefit of where in the right atrium thereabout, near the entrance of the superior vena cava, remember we said that. So assuming this is our superior vena cava, our SA node is somewhere here in the right atrium. Okay, assuming these are the chambers, right? And then we have AV node here. So from the SA it comes to the AV, then it comes to the bundle of His, which runs through the septum like this. Then its branches will now go, bundle of His. Then you have the right bundle branch, the left bundle branch, and then the Purkinje fibers are off those branches, right? So any signal that is generated from here by nature will go through this normal pathway, and then it will appear on the ECG like this. Okay, and it is called a sinus rhythm. So any rhythm that is generated from the SA node is a sinus rhythm. It has its characteristics, which we'll go over in another video. Okay, so let's assume this is a sinus rhythm. You will have your P, then you know that Q will follow, RS will follow, and then T will follow. Okay, but what does the P represent? What does P represent? Your P wave, your QRS represents what? Your ventricular contractions, and then your T represents your ventricular relaxation. So what do you think a problem of P? Since you know that P is representing your atrium, you will know that you have a problem going on with your atrium. If you have a problem with QRS, then you are thinking about your ventricles having issue with proper contraction. A problem at T tells you there's a problem with what? Ventricular relaxation. That is basically it, guys. That is basically it. If you know what the normal is, you'll be able to tell the abnormal. All right, now let me give you some tips, some small tips about the normal nature or what is expected of these waves. Okay, first of all, we have intervals, and then we have a segment. Okay, an interval is a duration that has a wave in it. Okay, so maybe from your P here, this is a wave. From your P here to your R here, it's called the PR interval. From here to here, it's called the PR interval. Okay, it has a duration, a normal duration. Okay, don't worry, we'll go into that later. And then your Q and your T, it's also an interval because there's a way over here. Okay, so you have PR interval, we have QT interval. Remember we spoke about QT interval being when the ventricle actually pumps and pushes blood out. So when you have a problem there, it means that there's a problem with your ventricular contraction pushing blood out, right? Long QT intervals are not good. The same way your PR intervals, your long PR intervals are also not good. Okay, that can be talking or pointing you to a heart block of a kind. A heart block, either first degree, second degree, third degree. Don't worry, we'll talk about all those things. So your P wave should be less than 3 small boxes. So back to our boxes. Your P wave, so assuming this boxes 1, 2, 3, you have an ECG going like this. Your P wave shouldn't be more than 3. Okay, so you can have a P wave that is like 2 small boxes, that is normal, or 3 small boxes like this, and it's normal. It shouldn't be more than that. Either it is just 1, 2 or 1, 2, 3. So when you take your P wave like this, you count the small boxes within 1, 2, 3. If you get 3 or less, then it's normal. Okay, then your QRS, it shouldn't be more than 5. So imagine your QRS is going like this little segment here. Okay, and you have your Q here, and then your R is going, your S comes, you know, and then your T also comes somewhere like this. So with this QRS, so with the beginning of your Q to the ending of your S here, it shouldn't be more than 5 small boxes. So if we take this as an example, 1, 2 is fine. If you have something going like this, how many boxes are there? From here to here is 1, 2, 3. Not bad. Okay, but anything more than that, anything more, okay, anything more than that, which you can count, this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, assuming we have 5, 6, because it's actually ending here. Okay, anything more than that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's not normal. That is what we call a widened QRS. Okay, and that is a problem. There are conditions that actually manifest like that. So that is why I said yours is to know the normal. If you know the normal, knowing that this is my P, it is representing my atrial contraction, it is not supposed to be more than 3 small boxes. This is my QRS. It is representing ventricular contraction or ventricular repolarization, and it is not supposed to be more than 5 small boxes. Now my T is also here. It is not also supposed to be a number of small boxes. Then you have one that is looking abnormal. You can tell. Okay, if you're not even able to, you know, pinpoint what exactly is going on or what you think is wrong with your PQRS or your rhythm, but you're able to tell that this rhythm is not normal, you're good to go. What have we been talking about so far? We look at our ECG paper, and then we said that vertically we have our voltage there, horizontally we have our time. Okay, and then we look at our small boxes, our big boxes, and then we spoke about their representations or what they represent. We said that our small box is 0.04, and then our big box is 0.2 because 0.4 times 5. Then our vertical over here is also 0.5 millivolts. Now back to what an isoelectric line means. We said this is a horizontal line or imaginary line drawn through the rhythms, right? And then we said anything above it positive, anything below it's negative. We came down to the PQRS complex, we looked at it, we said this is atrial contraction, the whole QRS is ventricular contraction, and then the T is ventricular relaxation. We went ahead to look at the various definitions of our waves, and we said that the P wave is the first positive deflection, the Q wave is the first negative deflection, the T wave is the second positive deflection, and then the S wave is the second negative deflection. You can agree with me that the P and the T are looking the same, aren't they? Especially if you take this one for example. This, they are all looking the same. So how are you going to tell whether this is a P or this is a T? Or whether this is a T and this is a P? There is a simple way of doing that. Okay, the simple way of doing that is what? The P wave, by definition, is the first positive deflection. Okay, so remember we're talking about positive deflections and negative deflections and the isoelectric line. That is why you need to have your imaginary line, or you can just eyeball and put your line there. Okay, So the first ever, when your reading begins, you have your lines, you know, your paper this way. Okay, where the reading begins, usually see some horizontal line. The first ever positive deflection, the first one that will go up, that is your P. So that becomes your reference point. This becomes your reference point. Okay, and that is all you need to know. Once you know your P, you know that what follows the P is a Q. The Q is also a negative deflection. The Q is a negative deflection. So the first negative deflection you get is your Q. So this place, because it is below the isoelectric line, it is negative and it is Q. Alright. Then your R comes. Your R is your next positive. So your second, positive deflection is R. Then this one is an S and it is negative. So your S is also your second negative deflection. Okay, and then your T now becomes your third positive deflection. All right, so always make sure you locate your P. All right, now we will talk about their definitions or their properties, the properties of a normal ECG, or what we call the sinus rhythm. Okay, so that brings us to the end of understanding our basic ECG video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.